Okay, so this is what I want to revisit for today. And I would like for you to have your sketchbooks out. And I want to talk just a little bit about this because what I saw from what was turned in and from walking around yesterday pretty much told me that most people are stuck. Not everybody, but most people are stuck. And we need to find a way to get past that because we shouldn't be on our phones right now at all. We should have our sketchbooks out. So you put together with me the heading portion. We still have started on October the 30th, but there's not an end date yet. What I'm going over today is part of the reason why I didn't put an end date in there. I don't have people ready to start today, and we should be. Okay? So part of that is on me, and part of that is because maybe I didn't have people really understanding, but they didn't ask questions. Okay? So I've had very few people actually ask me questions. Those people that have talked to me and have asked me questions, I think they ended up getting on the right track and they understand what I'm looking for. Okay? So, your requirements have not changed. Okay? The requirements that it be in 2-point perspective, that you have 5 boxes, that you show me the inside of the boxes, all of that is still the same. But what I am going to say is, if you have not come up with an idea that you can work with and sketch, and you've created some kind of picture in your mind that you could then create a thumbnail from, I'm going to give you some choices. And instead of spending another week trying to figure it out, I'm going to ask you to simply choose from one of the 5 I'm going to give you. Now, if you've already got it figured out, you don't have to change what you're doing. If you already have an idea, if you've already done your thumbnails, if you're ready to start today, this is not for you. Okay? This is strictly for the people who are at a point where their brainstorming section has nothing or little to nothing in it, and they have no thumbnails, even though we've worked on it for 2 days. Okay? So, looking at the brainstorming here, this is what I think brainstorming should look like. All right? Now, I am not wanting you to copy what I have here at all. But I am going to use it as an example of what I'm looking for. All right? So, yesterday in the class after this one, we made a list on the board of everything that we could think of to a point that came in a box, or that was the shape of a box. From sugar cubes to cereal boxes to Legos, all kinds of stuff. We had a whole list of these things. All right? And we did a little brainstorming from there. So I'm going to give you some of the ideas that I came up with, partly based on my own thinking before we made the list and from the list itself. And I see a lot of people on their phones and stuff like that. Guys, and I'm telling you, this is why we're having such a big disconnect between what I want and your understanding of what I want. Because I only have a part of your attention. I don't have all of it, just a part. Okay? I need your full attention for this. So, some of my brainstorming ideas, a space platformer, ship, that are made out of boxes with people doing spacewalks or making repairs or something like that. Cereal boxes in the pantry on different shelves, at different angles with cereal people like coming in and out as if the boxes are homes. A mouse house made from found boxes and other random materials for decoration, so I could use at least 5 boxes to create this mouse house. Maybe a detached garage, maybe a little tree house type thing on there, that kind of thing. A Mars station or something on any other planet with boxes representing different buildings that have different functions and stuff like that. Cheese cubes or ice cubes that are arranged into a building or some other type of sculpture where the absence of or presence of a box sticking out or a removed box creates those kind of openings that we were looking for, even stairs and stuff like that. Some kind of fancy tree house, maybe a village of tree houses, bird houses on stands or a fence or spread out in a garden. Okay, any of these I could make work. And I have lots to choose from. Okay, so then the next step was to actually take one and start working with it. Let me see if I can make this a little clearer. Okay, so I have a thumbnail here. And this is what I'm talking about with a thumbnail. All right, a thumbnail is all or part of an idea. So we were using this 3x4 rectangular template because you're going to be working on a rectangular piece of paper, the size a minimum of 9x12. And I put my 2 vanishing points on here. I did my sketch kind of using those vanishing points. It may not be perfect. All right. I've decided I'm going to have some flowers in the foreground. I didn't necessarily draw every flower, okay? But I've sketched out my bird houses here using that 2-point perspective. All right? I even have one here where I tried to put a little bit of the detail on the house. All right? Got a little stick kind of lining up with the 2-point perspective. The ones that are in the back, they're a little bit smaller. Okay, but you can see here, I've just kind of tried to darken it up, where my boxes are using 2-point perspective. And I've turned those boxes into birdhouses. Now I'm going to tell you right now that my main problem with telling people and giving an example is that now that I've done this, I'm going to have at least 2 or 3 people in every single class period that do their idea based on mine. Almost exactly like I've done it, instead of using their own imagination. That's why I didn't want to actually give you this information. Okay? So if you do something with birdhouses, I made that a choice, but I want you to make sure that you are doing something that is unique and your ideas and not something you went and looked up on the internet to do. Okay, so I'm thinking about my background. All right, I've got a couple of little birds in there. I've got these hanging on shepherd's hooks, okay, which I have some in my garage. I'll probably have to go and look at so that I know how to draw them. Okay, and I've thought about that whole kind of idea. All right, so I have to make a second and a third thumbnail. What is missing from this thumbnail before I can say it's complete? Huh? The color. Yes. So I have to somehow add some color to this. So I would probably pick maybe this section right here and take some colored pencils here. And I would need to spend a little bit more time than what I'm actually going to show right now. But, you know, maybe these are going to be, I want this to be bright colors. Okay, so maybe some kind of little sunflower. Maybe it looks like it's green, kind of leaves back behind here. You know, I don't want to waste your time kind of coloring all of this in. Maybe this birdhouse I'm going to do in kind of a purple. All right, and maybe it will have, what other color do I have sharpened and ready to go? Maybe it'll have just kind of a bright kind of purple. I've got to do different values. And we'll make this kind of be maybe a red flower over here. Be some more. So I'm gonna spend some more time adding color to this. But the point is that once I have this sketch, I have to do a section, about 25% of it, where I've looked at how am I going to work with the colors here. Okay. Then I move on to thumbnail number 2, and on my other layout, I have to have thumbnail number 3. all of them should be similar to what I've done right here. This would be, once I finish adding the color nicely, a finished thumbnail. All right? Lastly, once you have those thumbnails done, then it's time to work on the strategies. So you have 3 thumbnails. You've sketched out these ideas that you've liked. You've tried to figure out how it's going to fit on your final paper. Maybe you've done the detail of something as one of your thumbnails because you thought it might be a little bit more difficult, so you practiced drawing that. So now the question is, how are you going to make this? Now these are my strategies. Again, I don't want you to copy them. You need to look at your drawing and figure out how you're going to make it. Okay? Now some of these might be similar. I'm going to do this on 9 by 12 paper. We're definitely using colored pencils. That was part of the requirement. My vanishing points are going to be on the page, not off the page. I'm going to sketch it in pencil first. I'm going to make sure I use a ruler. I'm using 2-point perspective. I'm going to make my birdhouses out of wood, so I'm going to draw them so that they have kind of a wood texture to them. I'm going to use bright colors. I want this to look maybe like it's springtime, okay? And I'm going to use some shepherd's hooks to make the birdhouses look like they are kind of propped up in a garden setting, okay? And those shepherd's hooks are going to be black, so I know that when I do that, I'm going to have to be careful that that doesn't take away from these other bright colors that are there. So these are part of my strategies. Now at this point, I'm ready to start working on my project because I have my thumbnails done. I have a complete sketch. When I look at this sketch right here, what I want y'all to understand is that in this sketch, I could put this on a bigger piece of paper. It's ready to go. I'm not asking myself, well, where am I going to put my birdhouses, because I already kind of planned them out with the vanishing point. Even though I didn't use my ruler on here, I tried to make it look like my birdhouses were lining up with a vanishing point. All right? So this sketch, even though it's my first one, it's one that I could use and be ready to go. All right? So here is how I'm adjusting your assignment for you today. All right? So what I saw, and what was a little bit of an issue for me when I walked around, was that I had very few people, number one, that turned anything into me yesterday in Schoology. Like less than 10. Even though I have almost 200 students. Okay? 5. Yeah. So I have less than 10 that did it. And when I walked around yesterday in all of my classes, what I saw was not everybody had this, but most people. They had almost nothing in their brainstorming section. And they had no thumbnails at all. Even though that has been what we've been working on in class for 2 days. But I haven't had anybody asking me any questions either. So I have several concerns with that. My main concern is that when I'm giving the instructions like now, I look out and I see at least 5 people that are on their phones or on their computers right now while I'm trying to explain that. And I really don't know why. Because I'm in person right now talking to you about this stuff. So are you not listening? Do you not understand? Is this why I don't get questions? All right? So if you have an idea, and if you are one of those people who had a list of brainstorming ideas, and you have your thumbnails done, and you're actually ready or almost ready to work on the final, you do not have to change what you're doing. But if you are one of those people who has nothing in the brainstorming box, and you have no thumbnail sketches at all, because you didn't know what to do, you now have 5 choices. I want you to choose one of these 5 And I want you to, for your brainstorming, write out ideas for how you're going to create it. And then for your thumbnails, I want you to sketch what it's going to look like and add a portion of it and make it in color. Okay, so a tree house. You can approach this lots of different ways. This could be one tree house that's made up of 5 different boxes, all right, showing me the insides. This could be a whole neighborhood of tree houses that you've got several trees and they all have tree houses in them. Or maybe it's just 2 or 3 trees and they have several tree houses in the one tree. I don't know, however you want to approach it. Bird houses, I already showed you an example of that. Bird houses could be sitting on a fence. They could be sitting inside of a garden. They could be anywhere, out in the field, something like that. Okay, but they're boxes. Now the one thing you'll probably have to figure out how to do with that is how are you going to make that kind of pitched triangular roof. And there is a specific way you can do that using 2-point perspective. So ask me about it. I'll be glad to demonstrate. The inside of a factory. Imagine you've got conveyor belts going to boxes. Something goes into the box. It comes out the other side of the box with some kind of change to it. Maybe it's candy. And the first box puts chocolate on top of the candy. And then the second box puts a little sugary thing on top of the candy. And then the third box sticks it in a wrapper. Fourth box sticks it inside of another set of boxes. Okay, so something's happening in a factory and it goes from station to station. Or some other idea you can come up with a factory. The outside of those boxes could be covered in knobs and dials and stickers and all kinds of stuff to make it interesting. An ice cube sculpture or an ice cube type building, something like that. So imagine that you built something out of a whole bunch of different square ice cubes. All right? If you pulled one of those ice cubes out, would you see the inside of the ice cube sculpture? Yeah, so if you built this sculpture out of a whole bunch of ice cubes, but pulled like 5 of the ice cubes out, would that give me 5 openings and 5 boxes or more? Y'all are so quiet. Yes, it would. All right? A space station. So it's out in space. Maybe these space stations are, floating cargo boxes that have been fashioned together in some way, and you got space people walking around or fixing things or whatever. Okay, so here are 5 starting points for you. All right? If you choose to get reference ideas, it would be best if you actually went outside or inside and took pictures yourself of things. Okay? If you're going to the internet and you're copying somebody else's photograph, then you are violating copyright rules. Okay? Now the way you get around that, if the only place you have to get inspiration is from the internet, is you look at pictures from the internet, you observe them very closely, you close the picture from the internet and you draw it from your memory. If you're doing something like that, then instead of saying that you're copying from a picture on the internet, you're saying, I drew it from my memory. Because you did. You weren't looking at it when you drew it. Okay? But there's a very definite difference between what I see when you copy it and what I see when you draw from your memory. All right? And I can usually tell the difference. So, your job today is to get to that point where we needed to be yesterday, and that is, you have your sketchbook layout complete. I'm going to move this out of the way. That means your headings here, your requirements here, your brainstorming is here. You have 3 thumbnail sketches, and you have written out your strategies. All right? Now, I understand if you need a little bit more time tomorrow to maybe add some color, but it should not take all class period. By tomorrow, you should be starting on the actual drawing, not still planning for it. Okay? Are there questions? All right. Go to work.